All right, yo. Hey, so I wanted to come on. Kind of been watching something the last couple of days, and I wanted a little bit more info from a couple more sources before I talked about it. Just so I wouldn't be taking something and running with it, and then have to eat words later. I'd rather be one of the last to mention it and be right and be one of the first just to be wrong. So taking the last couple of days just to watch a couple of things, and they're noteworthy, and I said before I'm probably not going to be making as many videos as it was before, just because of things that I'm trying to deal with and go through. But if things of note popped up, then I would get on here and do it, and it has. So for anyone that's been, hey brother Jack, how you doing? Anybody that has been praying for me, I do appreciate it. It has been, the last couple of weeks has been a dark time for me. A lot of things I'm going through, and a lot of things I'm trying to deal with. I won't get into detail and all that, but if you have been praying, I do appreciate your prayers on that, and continue to. Hopefully God will help me get out of the dark time that I'm in soon. But until then, I just keep praying and trying to lean on Him as He would, wants us to. If you're going through a hard time, which a lot of people are, I encourage you to, hey, brother Pete, I'm hanging in there. It's not just me. I know there's a lot of people, especially veterans right now, that are just really having a hard time and going through a dark spot, so to speak. And then people even that aren't vets, due to the times that we're in and the things that are going on, a lot of people are just having a really hard time. So, as I said in my last video, I would work on trying to lean on God more, to help me through it. I'm still working on it. Some moments are great, other moments are not. But I will continue to try leaning on Him to get me through this, and hopefully you will too. As far as things that are going on, there's definitely been some things noteworthy. First of all, I'll bring up that the meeting between our president and the Israeli Prime Minister, what's his name? I keep wanting to say Netanyahu, but it's not. His name escapes me at the moment. But anyways, our president and the Prime Minister of Israel did end up having their meeting after it was postponed. And according to Amir, who's proved to be very reliable, and I don't think one thing that he said has turned out to be wrong, but apparently our president brought up the whole, let's get, Jerusalem to represent Israel and Palestine. Right? History has shown that when people try to take over Israel, or they try to divvy up the land of Israel, because God gave them that land, unless He allows it, like He did with the Babylonians. He allowed the Babylonians to go in, conquer Israel, and then spread Israel all over the place until 1948, when they finally got their country back. They still haven't gotten the entire land that God had given them, but they do have a country. We are now a nation with a leader who's trying to divvy up that land again, right? Trying to go, what do they call it, a two-state solution. Other than the times like with Babylon when God allowed it, when people have tried to divvy up lands or take land from Israel, whatever, God dealt with them very harshly. Why? Because it's not man's land to give away or to divide up. It is God's land that he promised Abraham way back in the day and said, a lot of this land that you see is going to be for you and your descendants. It is God's land. Israel is God's country, chosen country. Israelites are God's chosen people. And we say Israel is God's prophetic timepiece. So now that we have a leader who's had a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister and had discussions where two-state solution is brought up, and he made it known that's what he wanted to work on. It is not going to give good. There's going to be bad repercussions from that on our nation because our leader's trying to do that. Thankfully, the Prime Minister of Israel had enough common sense to say, yeah, no, we're not going to accept that. I do find it interesting that as that meeting was taking place, that's when Hurricane Ida made landfall, or around the time that it made landfall. And as it has gone through the United States, it has wreaked havoc everywhere it went. Okay, usually when we get hurricanes that hit anywhere in the Gulf, as it gets closer inland, it gets weaker and weaker, and by the time it gets north, yeah, it does, some, but, it's equivalent to, a bad storm. Everywhere this thing has gone, it has caused devastation, it has caused flooding, it has caused power outages, it has caused unknown financial amounts of damage, and has also had deaths everywhere that it has gone through the United States. So me, Derek, whatever my last name is, thinking to myself, it's not a thus saith the Lord or anything else like that. The BP in America is for Bible prophecy. Yes. What do you mean by that? As he's answering that. I really had to kind of think to myself, thinking to myself, going, is it really a coincidence, or was God using that to try, wake America up? Obviously, there's been a lot going on. He's trying to wake America. He's trying to wake the whole world up. But is the devastation and everything part of the repercussions of our leader having the conversation that he had with the Israeli Prime Minister and trying to bring up the two-state solution again and let the Prime Minister know that's what he wants to work on. I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that happened. And I don't think that's the only thing. If our leader keeps going down that road, I don't think that's the last thing that we're going to see or have to deal with because of that. If that's really what, and if he continues trying to push that agenda, more is going to happen. So that was interesting, and something I wanted to bring up, and something, keep in the back of your mind, that as our government is working towards and on this crap, keep an eye out for more, and be prepared for more stuff to come from it, because God does not take that lightly. That's His land. He made that very clear, and it is not to be divided up by man. So I think we're in for a bumpy ride, and that, as far as that, and that's not even taking into consideration everything else that's going on. Some of the other things I wanted to bring up. So again, our wonderful leader has, I guess, been working back channels and trying to get Iran back to the discussion table about the JCPOA, right? Trying to, looking really hard at September 6th, 7th, or 8th. Certainly not looking forward to September 11th. Yeah, I'll be getting on. Good points there, Brother Pete. I'll be touching on those as well a little bit. So they're trying to get Iran back to the discussion table for the JCPOA. Iran has come out after not answering any calls or any communications, however they're communicating. He came out and said, listen, we're not going to even think about coming to the table until November. Now, it also came out recently that Iran is producing or is enriching uranium past 60%. And they're weeks from enriching it and having a nuclear weapon. So I do not think it's coincidence that they're saying, yeah, we'll think about coming back to the table in November, because if we're still here, and I'll get to that, if we're still here in November, by that time they'll already have it, if they don't already. But I do, by that point, what's the point of having a JCPOA if they've already gotten their weapon? But it is what it is, and nothing happens that God doesn't allow to happen. Something I'm trying to remind myself every day. Sometimes successfully, most of the time not. But anyways, so that was an important thing. I think it was to bring up. Iran has said they are not until November, and they are. They didn't even hide it. That's the thing is, they didn't even hide it. They pretty much announced to the world, hey, this is what we're doing. We're enriching. We've got uranium up to 60%. And guess what? Now we're enriching it even more. Of course, this was after that whole fiasco event a couple weeks ago that I just don't go into. And if you've been watching my videos, then you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So, yeah, I expect that when they finally do have that, they are going to announce it to the world, and it's probably just at most weeks from coming to pass, them actually having a nuclear weapon. There are two other things that happened that I think are significant. The main reasons why I'm bringing up or making this video today. So Isaiah 17. If you don't know it, I highly encourage you to pause this, go ahead, find a Bible, find Isaiah, and read chapter 14. It is a prophecy in which, Damascus right now is a city in Syria. If you didn't know, Damascus is a city in Syria, and it is the oldest inhabited city in the world, which means since Damascus came to pass, it is the only city in the world, well, it's the oldest city in the world, in which, despite all the wars that have happened around it and whatnot throughout the ages, it has never stopped being inhabited and operating as a city. Never has. It has never been conquered or reduced to rubble to where the point it was no longer livable. It is the oldest inhabited city in the world. Isaiah 17 talks about how one day something's going to happen. We don't know what it is. But it states how they will go to bed one night, and in the morning, Damascus will be a ruinous heap. It is going to be leveled, completely leveled and uninhabitable. No one's going to live there anymore. I bring this up because of two things. One, Iran came out, I believe it was yesterday, and let the world know that they have occupied part of, if not the whole, Golan Heights, Syria's portion of the Golan Heights. Right? Iran said, we've got it, it's under our control, it's ours. This is very important because the Golan Heights, go look it up on a map, it borders Israel. So being that Iran controls part, if not all of it, they are on Israel's northern border. Just think about that for a minute. Iran announced that they control Syria's Golan areas. Thus, they are on Israel's northern border. Why? This is important because of Isaiah 17 as well. Not so much, maybe not so much Isaiah 17, but because of Ezekiel 38. Ezekiel 38 is another prophecy in which God explained he explained the Gog of Magog war. First one, which Gog, if my understanding is correct, based on my study and listening to others who have vast better knowledge than I do, Gog is a title. So it would be like king, right? King, president, prime minister, right? Gog is a title. So Gog of Magog war. So the king of Magog war. Let's put it that way. We'll keep it simple. In this war, Gog of Magog is going, the country Magog, at that time it was called Magog, which in today's world is Russia, is going to work with several other countries, which today's equivalent is Turkey, Syria, Iran, Libya, Ethiopia, and a couple others, or a few others. Basically, they're all going to raise up an army and going to attack Israel. The interesting thing about this, though, is Israel is not going to lift a finger. God is going to supernaturally protect Israel from this army. God is going to wipe that army out. All supernaturally. He's just going to wipe that army out. And the fallout, per se, of those that are going to come against Israel is going to provide Israel with all kinds of resources that will last them several years. So that's the Ezekiel 38 Gog and Magog prophecy. That is going to happen. I bring that up because, along with Iran coming out and saying they control the Syria's Golan area, word came out that Israel, we've seen in the past where Israel has done strikes against Syria and against Iran, more focusing on their resources in which they could attack Israel with. They've gone around Damascus. The other day they actually hit inside Damascus. Okay, so it is no longer just focused around. No, they actually went and they hit inside Damascus. I think there were like warehouses that were, storing Iranian resources, military resources, and one of them, Syria, tried defending. Using a anti-missile contraption. I forget what they call it. And then Israel went in and hit that missile defense system that was in Damascus. The reason they did this is because some of those missiles that were fired from the missile defense system actually landed inside of Israel. So Israel went in and actually hit and damaged that missile warning system in Damascus. This is interesting because from all accounts it appears Isaiah 17 is going to happen first. That's the what I believe is the first domino that's falls that's going to kick off the Ezekiel 38 Gog and Magog war. So if Israel is now hitting targets inside Damascus, then we know we are very close to seeing Damascus become a ruinous heap. Whether it's something Israel does that levels the entire city, which I don't think it is, because Israel's very mindful of civilian casualties, and they usually, before they, if they're going to strike a building, they usually drop some roof knocker, what they call roof knockers, right? They're non-explosive ordinances that they drop on the roof, and it lets people in that building know, hey, you've got about an hour to get out of the building because we're going to level this thing. Or if they're going to be knowing they're going to be hitting targets in an area, they'll drop pamphlets. They'll fly over, they'll drop pamphlets all over saying, hey, we're going to be hitting targets in this area. You've got X amount of time to leave, right? They're very mindful. I think probably the U.S. and Israel are probably the most mindful of civilians when it comes to military action, right? They don't want to cause civilian deaths. They don't want to hurt buildings that aren't military. They're just for civilian purposes, so forth and so on. So Israel really goes out of their way to eliminate, if they can't eliminate, at least minimize the amount of civilian casualties. And they do everything in their power to ensure that there's no civilian casualties. So the thought of Israel, dropping, a ton of bombs that levels the city of Damascus, it just doesn't coincide with how they do things. Is it possible? Yes. I think, and my fear is, Iran will, once they do get that nuclear weapon, they are probably going to send it into Syria. at this point, if my thinking is right, then probably send it to some warehouse, whatever, in Damascus, store it there for whatever future intention they have, and Israel's going to hit that building and inadvertently, cause it to detonate, and then the nuclear weapon going off, in Damascus, that's what's going to level the city. That's one scenario. The other scenario is, Iran could do it themselves, blame it on Israel as an excuse to, go ahead and attack Israel and, cause the Gog and Magog war to happen. However it happens, though, Damascus is going to become a ruinous heap. And being that Israel is now attacking things inside of Damascus, I think we are very close to seeing that prophecy come to fruition. And as soon as it does, then we know the Ezekiel 38 Gog and Magog war is right behind. It'll be a short amount of time before that, happens. And I believe that Russia will just use the Damascus destruction as an excuse to lead a charge against Israel, and then end up doing the Gog and Magog war. So those are very interesting things that I wanted to bring up, and something to keep an eye on. If you haven't subscribed to Amir Sarfati's Telegram channel, I highly suggest that you do it, because he's usually breaking information, especially around the Middle East, sooner than most news agencies are. He's got sources all over. And usually within minutes of something happening, he's posting about it, saying, "Hey, this just happened." So I highly encourage you to subscribe, turn on the notifications for it, so your phone will show you, hey, you got something from Amir Sarfati, and keep up with that. Not only the Middle East, he does things from all over the world that are pertinent to end times and Bible prophecies. So I highly suggest that you go ahead and do that. And those two things were things that he's been reporting on, and I definitely did want to bring this up in case there's anybody not aware, make you aware, and definitely keep a watch. As the days go on, Middle East, it is getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and it is a powder keg one match from going off. And we're seeing more and more unfold every day. And it's more and more, it's not even a full day goes by before, most things happen. I think we've entered from daily phase, and now we're moving into we're seeing multiple things, and eventually, you're just going to, hear about things every hour, every few hours, every hour, it seems like. So highly suggest keep an eye on those two things, and let's see what Iran's going to do now that they control Syria's Golan area, and see if there's any more attacks. Also to note, another reason I bring up Syria and possible nuclear weapon that inadvertently gets detonated is because typically in the past, Syria has transported military resources either through Iraq into Syria, or they'll ship it around in Lebanon into Syria. Now, especially since the U.S.'s cluster F, I'll leave it at that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you haven't been watching the news. But ever since that event happened, people have noticed Iran is sending planes straight from Tehran straight into Damascus. Right, so now they're not even, I'm sure they're still sending resources, through through Iraq, through Lebanon, through, whatever way they can. But now they're just sending it, they're just sending their planes full of only God knows what straight into Damascus. And that's been a new thing that they picked up, and they're not even trying to hide it. Now that they're no longer fearing the United States, or don't feel they have to fear the United States, they're getting a lot more bold. And especially since, they're kind of got support from Russia, who's becoming the powerhouse in the Middle East. They're getting even more emboldened and just not even hiding a lot of what they're doing, because they don't feel they need to. Why? Because the only thing that they feared, the U.S., they're not even fearing them anymore, and we haven't really given them a reason to. So keep an eye on that. And now none of this is really surprising. We've seen things kick off and accelerate as the years has gone by. They've accelerated faster and faster and faster, and right now it just seems to be it's an acceleration, almost on steroids or roid rage right now. Bible refers to these times as birth pangs, right? As equates it to a woman in labor, right? So all the weather storms, the natural disasters, the wars and rumors of wars, all the stuff that's been going on in the world, where most people are shaking their head going, the world has lost its mind, it's gone crazy. Just this year alone, we've seen, it just accelerate. Earlier in the year, we were watching things, maybe we get one or two things a month, and then it was every few weeks to every other week to every week and every few days, and now we're daily, as the years gone by. And I don't see that trend stopping. So as we get closer to the rapture, which the rapture is when Jesus Christ, and he's in the sky, sounds a trumpet, dead rise first, right? So he's going to raise those that have already died. He's going to raise their bodies, and then after the dead have risen and met him in the sky, then we in turn, the living, in the blink of an eye, will disappear. True believing Christians will disappear and meet Jesus in the sky, and then be taken into heaven. And that is what Brother Pete was mentioning when he said he's looking really hard at September 6th, 7th, or 8th. He's talking about rapture. Israel is celebrating Feast of Trumpets. I believe they're celebrating it on it's either the 6th or 7th, or 7th and 8th. It's two days that they celebrate the Feast of Trumpets. And due to, which verse was it? One of the verses where God's talking about the rapture, he annotates Jesus will be in the sky, and with the voice of an archangel and the blast of a trumpet, we will meet him in the air. A lot of people believe a possibility that a trumpet is used to call the church, which is true believing Christians, to meet Jesus in the air, is because it'll be over the Feast of Trumpets, which the Feast of Trumpets, basically there's 99 trumpet blasts. They're divided up in a certain way. I believe it's, I forget. They're divided up, and basically amount comes to 99, and then there's one last blast that's the longest, blast, and it's at that last trumpet, because of the way that it's worded in the Bible, a lot of people who have a lot more knowledge than I do about end times and about the rapture believe it's a very good and high possibility that the trumpet blast is used because it happens over the Feast of Trumpets, which makes sense for why there is that celebration and there is that feast. There's 7 feasts that God has. Feast of Trumpets is the Brother Pete, if you're still on, correct me if I'm wrong. Feast of Trumpets is used kind of to signal a harvest time or the completion of a harvest time, and so a harvest time, which that is what Jesus will be doing when at the rapture. He'll be harvesting the church, right? Calling out true believers, harvesting them, taking us on up to heaven so that we don't have to go through the tribulation, which is 7 years of God's wrath being poured out on the world. It's to judge the world, but it's also more because he's bringing Israel back to himself. So there's a Feast of Trumpets, and then there's the Feast of Atonement, which, the Feast of Atonement, and then after that, the Feast of Tabernacles. Those are the last, there's 4 spring feasts, 3 fall feasts, and those are 3 fall feasts and that we're in. So I digress. But anyways, so a lot of people are looking at 6th or 7th, or 6th through the 8th, due to the new moon and the Feast of Trumpets, as that being a very high watch time. I understand the thinking, and I say all the time, I listen every day. We're at that point. It could happen every day. It could happen before I'm done making this video. It could happen tonight. It could happen tomorrow. Or it could happen next week or next month or this time next year. We don't know. That's why Jesus said, keep watch. We would know the season. Okay, so all of us that are watching, all of us, agree we are in the season. He's given us a laundry list of things to look at and watch for, and we're just check. We've checked all these things off, saying, hey, unlike ever before in history, we've got all these things being checked off, and all these things that are going to happen during the tribulation, we're seeing them being set up like never before in history. Right? There's a lot of Christians even right now. They're saying, we've heard this before, and World War II, you had, the whole world was at war, and 75 million people, died, and, all this other stuff. And yes, that is true, but, never before in history has so many things been checked off as saying complete, nor has there ever in history where you can say, hey, I can see the image of the beast being set up, which is a 10-story statue that can, move its head, move its arms, and be made to look like anyone. All right, and it can speak. That's something that they're working on, and I think it's actually visiting 21 cities, around the world as we speak. If not, then they'll be starting at later this year. Never before have we seen, the technology in place for what will become Mark of the Beast, right? For the first time, we've got RFID chips that can be planted in the human body, and on top of that, it's come out that the best places to put these RFID chips in the human body to recharge and keep charged is on the right hand and forehead. Surprise, surprise. There's quantum dot tattoos, which a lot of people think that'll be used in conjunction with the RFID chip to create the image, the mark of the beast, in which it'll be visible in your right hand or forehead. And then I believe it was Microsoft that put in a patent for a scanner. I believe it's for these RFID chips, and the patent number, starts with, a couple letters, and then of course is the number part of the patent is 060606. Okay, so for the first time we're seeing all these things. They're there, now they just need to be put together, and it's at a time they can be put together. They haven't yet. Okay, the church is going to be gone before that happens, but for the first time, we're just seeing all these things. We're seeing, the Pope, right? Billions of Catholics worldwide. And we've got a Pope that's having a Chrislam center built in Abu Dhabi, and as well as they're building one in Germany, I believe it is. They're working on building another one, I believe it's in Germany. Basically, it's going to have a church, a synagogue, and a mosque. And the whole point is it's for Chrislam, right? It's so all these religions can come together and worship or serve one God. And that's one thing that this Pope is going around trying to get people to buy into. Hey, ultimately, all these different religions, we all pray to the same God. No, we don't. But that's what he's going around saying. So you've got this world religious leader that is, creating and setting up what we can see as one world religion. We're seeing cryptocurrency for the first time. We can actually see a currency being set up and being pushed by the World Economic Forum, as well as world leaders and world elites. They're pushing for this cryptocurrency, one world currency. And I think a lot of what we're seeing happening is a purposefully planned attempt to collapse the world economy, because once it is collapsed, then they can usher in this new currency. And the whole point behind cryptocurrency is it's all digital. There's actually no physical money. It can be turned off, turned on, and they can monitor down to the cent of everything that you purchase or use money for. Right? So that'll come in real handy where, you don't have a mark on your right hand or forehead, you can't buy or sell, and we'll make damn sure you can't buy or sell because, we control your money, we can turn it off. We want you to behave in a certain way. You're not behaving in a certain way, we'll go ahead and turn your finances off until you comply. That you can, and we've already seen this starting to be, has been done and is being done in China. All right, they got a social system to where it's kind of like our credit system, right? You have to have a certain credit score if you want to take out a loan. They have to have a certain social score if they want to be able to do things, right? The lower your score, hey, if you got a score below a certain point, you can't purchase a airplane ticket. You can't do this, you can't do that. You want to do this, you have to have above this social score, right? So we're already seeing it being implemented in China and being done, and it'll just be, spread out. So we're seeing all these things for the first time in history, all happening all at the same time, all here readily available, either being completed, or we can see the foundation being set. And for the first time, we're actually seeing, hey, we're getting an idea of what the tribulation is going to be like. So that is my answer to those who say, yeah, well, we've heard this before and they've been saying it for hundreds of years. Yeah, well, for the first time in history, we're seeing things that just weren't even possible back then. On top of that, for the first time, you're seeing key players in the Gog and Magog war actually operating out of and working together in Syria. Right? They're going to come in from the north and try and attack Israel. Okay, there's another answer for those who naysayers and doubters. That is why those of us who are watching, God said we would know the season. Just that alone says that we are in the season. And then on top of that, I, like, for myself, I don't just know it because of things that, I'm seeing happening around the world. I know it because the Holy Spirit is helping me understand we are in the season. And a lot of the watchmen and women who are, trying to sound the alarm and do a much better job at keeping track of all this stuff, they say the exact same thing. I know we are in the season, not because of everything I'm seeing, but because I know inside, and that's God reassuring me. Obviously, there are people that are sleeping, Christians who are sleeping, who don't realize it or don't believe it. Does that mean they're not going to be taken? No, they will be taken too. The only requirement in order to be taken in the rapture is that you're a born-again Christian. Which a born-again Christian is, we believe that we are sinners, and because of our sin, we deserve spiritual death, eternal damnation, right? Eternity in hell. That is what we deserve, because God cannot have sin in His presence. But God did not create us for wrath. So instead, He did all the work, because no man can do any amount of good actions to qualify them into heaven. Right? What was it? Ephesians 2:11. Right? Basically, it's the verse that says, in order to be saved, it is based on faith, so that no one can say, oh, it's because I did this, or I did that, or I did this, and I did that. No, it doesn't matter what you did or didn't do. Jesus is the only reason we qualify. What do we mean by that? Well, God is three entities in one. One God, three persons. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. God the Father sent His Son, Jesus, to earth to be born as a baby, to live on earth as a man. Right? So in order to do that, Jesus Christ had to give up some of His powers, and He became a man. Well, first He was a baby, right? Mary, right? He was born, grew up, became a man, lived a perfect life, had a ministry here on earth. At the end of His ministry, the Jews were, they didn't believe, a lot of Jews didn't believe He was who He said He was. So they had Him arrested. The Romans arrested Him, they tortured Him, and ended up crucifying Him, causing Him to die. Right? So He was tortured, He was crucified, and He died, even though He did nothing wrong, not one sin. Why did He do this? Because it would take someone perfect. It would take a perfect man, because that's what Jesus was. He was God, but He was man, to die so that they could defeat death pay for the sins of the world. And by defeating death, he was rose again, which, let me get in. So Jesus Christ, he was crucified, he died, he was buried on, let's say, a Friday, buried in a tomb on Friday evening, stayed in the tomb Saturday. Sunday morning, he resurrected. Reason he did that is because as he was on the cross, he took the entire sins of the world, all sins that were done before his time, sins that were being done at his time, and all the sins that were going to be committed in the future. He took it upon himself. He died. On the third day, he rose again, defeating death. Since he took all those sins upon himself, all those sins were paid for. All those sins were paid for. He took them upon himself, saying, I will be the sacrifice. When people sin, they need to die. So I will die in their place. So he did. He died in our place. But because he was perfect, he was able to defeat death. And in doing so, he defeated death, rose again. For the first time in history, we then had a direct community. We were able to directly talk to God. And then if we put our faith into what he did on the cross, that's the only thing that God says we have to do, right? Believe in your hearts and confess with your mouth. It's the only thing that we have to do. We just have to believe that we are sinners, that Jesus Christ took our sins upon himself. He died for us. He rose again so that we wouldn't have to pay that damnation for all eternity in hell. We put our faith in that. We put our understanding in what we deserve. We accept the gift that he provided, because that's what salvation is. It's a gift, right? So it's like going to a restaurant. You order the best meal you can imagine, and when the bill comes, Jesus Christ takes a receipt, he pays it for you. Well, what do I got to do? Nothing. The best way that, and I've shared this before, the explanation I've ever heard was, a man was inside his house and his house caught on fire. And this man comes up and says, here, I can give you fire insurance. Just sign on the dotted line. He's like, even though my house is on fire? Even though your house is on fire. Well, what do I got to pay? Nothing. I already paid it for you. All you got to do is sign on this dotted line, and you'll have fire insurance. Your house will be saved. Well, maybe not saved, it'll still burn, but you'll have a new house built, and even better. That's what Jesus Christ did for us, right? Because we sin, our house, it's on fire. All Jesus says is, here, I have this gift for you. All you got to do is just believe it, accept it, take it. That's it. Just accept it, and you'll be saved. So as Christians, that's what we put our faith in. I, Derek, as an example, Derek, whatever my last name is, I sin. And because of my sin, I deserve to go to hell. Why? Because God can't have sin in his presence. If you can't have sin in his presence, you can't have sin in heaven. But I accept what Jesus Christ did on the cross for me. I accept that he paid for my sins. So I accept this gift. I didn't have to do anything. It's right there in front of me. All I got to do is just reach out and take it. That's what I did. I believe. And then because I have that belief, when my physical body dies, my spirit and soul doesn't. It will be taken into heaven, and I will be able to spend all eternity with God. That's the difference between Christianity and every other religion in the world. Every other religion in the world, it requires works. you have to do something, or you have to do a certain amount of things in order to qualify to be into heaven. Christianity is the only thing that's saying you don't have to do anything. The work is already done for you. All you have to do is believe. There's only one unforgivable sin. The only unforgivable sin in which God cannot forgive is a person not believing in Him, not believing that they're a sinner, not believing Jesus Christ died for their sins and then rose again 3 days later at the time of their physical body death. It is unforgivable because that person never accepted the gift of salvation. Now, a person can be on their deathbed, and a perfect example of that is the thief that was hanging on I believe it was the right side of Jesus Christ. Right? Jesus Christ was crucified. On his right was a thief, and on the left, I believe, a murderer. Or maybe it was another thief. 2 thieves. Right? The one on his left didn't believe, nothing like that. The one on his right, as you know, they were hanging there, and people were weeping, and Jesus was saying some of his last things. The thief on his right said, I believe. Right? I believe you're the Son of God. And I believe that you're here to save the world. Spiritually save the world. And Jesus' response to that was, you will be in paradise with me today. Obviously, this thief was being crucified for his actions. So this person did not live a good life. And he did this at most hours before he died, if not less. So if he's hanging on a cross, there was nothing that he did. He couldn't. He was hanging on a cross. The only thing that he told Jesus was, I believe. And Jesus said, you will be in paradise with me today. Christianity is the only religion that teaches that. Getting to heaven is through a gift because the work was done for you. All you have to do is believe. Non-belief at the time of physical death is the only sin God can't forgive. And people who don't believe in God, don't believe in Jesus' work on the cross, they're the ones that have to go to hell because they aren't covered by Jesus Christ's blood. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's say God's looking down at a non-believer right now. When God looks down and looks at their spirit and soul, he sees just this person's spirit and soul drenched in sin. When he looks down at me, though, and trust me, I am not a perfect guy. I do a lot of things wrong. And we'll take somebody who actually lives a good life, but doesn't believe in God. Someone who lives a really good life trying to get into heaven but doesn't believe might do less sin than me. Even though I might do more sin than them, where God looks at them and sees a spirit and soul drenched in sin. When he sees my spirit and soul, he sees it drenched in his son's blood. He doesn't see a sinner. He sees someone covered in his son's blood. Because I accepted the gift. That is the difference between a saved person and an unsaved person. How much love does God have to have where he did all the work for you? And the only thing that he requires is you just have faith. You just believe. You can't see God, but you can't see the wind either. But you know the wind is real because you see the effects of the wind. If you can believe that there's wind because you see the effects of the wind, then you can believe in God too. And when you do, you'll see the effects God has all around you every day. So that's the difference between a saved person and an unsaved person. If you're on the fence and you haven't taken that leap of faith yet, I encourage you, don't waste any more time, because we are running out of time. One of these days, that trumpet is going to blast. And when it does, you want God to be looking down on you and seeing you covered in his son's blood, so that you're taken into paradise with him, because you do not want to be here for the 7 years of hell that is going to come on earth. And the only thing required is you have faith. Again, every other religion teaches you have to do a certain amount of works. You have to do things to qualify to get you into heaven. Christianity, you don't have to do anything because it has already been done for you. Well, how can a God love me that much? Well, let me ask you this question. If you have a kid, do you not do everything in your power to make your child happy? If your kid wants something, most times, most parents will just go out and get it for their child just go out and get it. Why? Because it makes a parent happy to see their child happy. At most, the parent may say, hey, because they want them to, for instance, let's say a car. Hey, you need to, raise $1,000, and then I'll get you this car. Why? It's not because the parent needs $1,000 to get them a car. The parent wants their child to value and appreciate the gift they're going to be receiving. It's the same thing with belief. Right? We don't have to do physically, we don't have to do anything to be saved. But God does require us to take a leap of faith. We have to believe in something we cannot see. We have to believe in an event we didn't witness. We don't have to physically do anything. We just have to have that belief. And when we do, he requires us to have that belief, because then we value it even more, if that makes any sense. How much love does God have for each and every single person on the face of this planet if he did all the work for you, and the only thing he asks, just have faith? Believe. That's it. Believe in your heart, confess with your mouth. That's all you got to do. You don't have to do it in front of anybody. You could go by yourself into a closet, say a prayer, say, Jesus Christ, I know I'm a sinner, and because I've sinned, I deserve to be in hell. But I believe Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins. I believe 3 days later he rose from the grave, defeating death, paying for my sins. And because my sins are paid for, I believe that qualifies me to go to heaven. I believe in what you did for me. I believe you have that much love for me. And the second that you pray that, the Holy Spirit will come and live inside of you, and you will feel a peace, you will feel warmth, you will feel a love like you've never ever done it before. And the thing is, you don't even have to tell anybody you did it, and you'll still be saved. Now, most people, once they become saved, that's the only thing they want to talk about. Why? Because that's a love, that's a peace, that's a warmth that you will never feel from anything else on the face of this earth, and you'll want to share it. But my point being is, it's a prayer just between you and God. You don't have to do anything else. That is love. That is true love. As the Bible says, no greater love is this than a man lay down his life for another man. And that is what Jesus Christ did for us. He loves you so much that he laid down his life for you. Tortured, died, defeated death, so that you would not have to spend all eternity in spiritual death and damnation in hell. That's love. His only requirement, you have faith. Nothing more. You don't have to do anything, just believe. And we say that prayer as a communication because we want God to know we believe it. We want God to know that we're putting our trust and our faith and our eternal lives in his hand. Don't make the mistake of waiting to, well, I'll believe if I see millions of people disappear, then I'll believe. You don't want to get stuck here for those 7 years. More than likely, you won't survive all 7 years. And if you do, it's going to be horrendous. Like I said before, if you can believe that there's wind, even though you can't see the wind, but you see the effects of the wind, then you can believe in God too, and you'll see the effects of God. On that note, I will end this. Those are the things I wanted to share. This has got way longer than I anticipated, but for whatever reason, God must have wanted me to say all that. I hope this reaches somebody. Like I said, if you're not saved, don't wait any longer. Put your faith in Jesus Christ. If you are one of those that want to wait, I don't understand why, but if you do want to wait until you see millions of people to know it's all true, if you want to wait until millions of people all of a sudden just disappear to know it's all true, or if you're watching this after millions of people have disappeared, please know it is not too late. You're going to go through hell and possibly die for your faith. And if you don't die for your faith, then you're good chance you probably die through one of the other catastrophes that hit the world, because most of the population is, dead by the end of the 7 years. But no, it's not too late. It's too late to be raptured. If millions of people have already disappeared, then it's too late to be raptured. But it's not too late to be saved. You can say that prayer right now and be saved. What you don't want to do, though, when it comes about 3.5 plus years after millions of people have disappeared, and there's this mark you have to take on your right hand or forehead and worship an image of the world leader, you don't want to take that mark, because that is the only time that we ever see in the Bible that an action disqualifies you from going to heaven. Reason being is because if you take that mark on your right hand or forehead, you are taking sides of you're taking the side of the enemy. It is better that you don't take it and die for your faith, because then you will spend all eternity in heaven. If you do take that mark, you will spend all eternity in hell. As scary as it might be, or to think that by not taking it, you're going to die, trust me, a beheading is a lot less painful than all eternity in hell. So, again, if you're not saved, please don't wait any longer. We're running out of time. Time's almost up. If you're watching this after millions have disappeared, it is not too late for you. It's not too late until you've breathed your last breath. For any brothers and sisters that are watching this, we're still here. We need to occupy and redeem the time. Share this message with as many people as you can. Sound the alarm. Allow yourself to be a tool that Jesus uses, that God uses to save others before it's too late. Let's encourage one another. Times are getting tough. Things are getting frustrating. The world is getting crazier. Right is being called wrong, and wrong is being called right. As more watch times have come and gone, it's gotten a little more frustrating to keep waiting and watching for the rapture. Just keep encouraging each other that, hey, it's going to happen. We don't know, we may not know when, but we know we're in the season. Keep encouraging one another. Keep looking up. Keep waiting. Keep occupying and redeeming the time. So I hope this helps somebody. I hope this encourages somebody. And I look forward to seeing what happens over the 6th and 8th. Even if we don't get raptured out, I don't think, well, every day we're seeing more and more things happen. So I have a feeling there'll be some important things that happen over those days for sure. According to Enoch calendar, possible the Feast of Trumpets is a week later. Not sure how the new moon fits in all that. I hear different things. I don't know. So I'm saying it's going to be an interesting time from the 6th through the 15th. We'll say that. So keep encouraging one another. Let's keep our heads up. Let's keep watching. And if we're still here, I'll see you on the next video.